between the two of them.
The inside of Coates.
Parker gets too heavily involved.
And that's Whitehead and Coates.
Hello everyone and welcome for round 2 of the VRRC Audi TT Cup Championship powered by 10 Tenths Coaching. My name is Jack Oliphant. I'm proud to say that we got Steve Proudley along with me as well in the Simply Race comms box. We're here at Brands Hatch GP for the second round, and Steve, it's always a popular track amongst drivers. It's one of those tracks that just never has an easy corner, but that's going to spice up some action for us tonight, isn't it?
Absolutely, mate. Yeah, and it's good to be back with VRRC and Brands Hatch. Like you say, it's a fantastic track, but it's difficult to hit to hook those consistent lap times. And we've just been talking off air a little bit about Paddock Hill and the likes, and just being consistent every lap. So it's not going to be an easy one tonight.
It isn't indeed, and yeah, as you were saying, we actually were having a chat with Rich Hayden, weren't we, about the track before, the likes of Paddock Hill Bend, which is the first corner, Surtees onto the back sort of GP loop, and then obviously the sort of Graham Hill. Anywhere in the Indy track is actually my sort of downfall, but the back end of the Brands Hatch GP circuit is increasingly hard as well. It's, as I said before, one of those tracks that just never seems to have a traditional corner on the 3.2 mile circuit. Of course, there's two configurations. There is the GP and the Indy circuit, but we are lucky enough to be using the GP circuit today. And, well, the format for tonight is the fact that we've got 2 races coming up for you. So in a couple of minutes, we'll have the qualifying session, which will last about 10 minutes. That'll take us to about 15:15. And then we've got 2 15-minute races, the second of which is a top 12 reverse grid. And well, I mean, you can attest to it, Steve, that it was excitement from start to finish in both races, really, wasn't it, last week at the Nürburgring?
Yeah, definitely. The reverse grid certainly threw up a few interesting manoeuvres and some very good aggressive tactics. But this week we've got ballast in there as well. So obviously the championship leader Jack Noller's carrying 30 kilos of ballast. So we'll have to see how the ballast affects these guys around here. And also I think they're going to struggle to use the push to pass as effectively as they did at the Nürburgring.
Yes, of course, the push to pass is a key element in the TT Cup racing, but we will cover all that through probably qualifying and build up to race 1, as well as giving you a brief. We've actually learned a little bit more, Steve, haven't we, about how we can read when they're using the push to pass and everything like that, and we'll be able to teach the viewers at home as well of that, so we can share the knowledge out. But now, let's just have a chat about the Nürburgring, because obviously that was round 1 of the championship. There are 4 rounds of the championship. We're, of course, on the second one at the moment. I believe we head to Barcelona next week, and then we're actually off to Imola for the final round of the championship, which a few of our drivers really sort of focused in on as being one of the most exciting tracks that they're looking forward to doing. And since it's the finale, it's certainly going to be interesting to see how the championship points hang out. The Nürburgring top 5 from race 1 then was Marshall in first place, Edmondson in second, Noller in third, Butler and McIntyre 4th and 5th. And if anybody remembers the final couple of corners, Steve, I think you would probably remember it quite well as well, between Butler and McIntyre, it was just getting more and more heated, wasn't it? Especially the sort of chicane onto the final corner. They just ended up hitting each other off almost.
Yeah, they went beyond sharing the track, those two guys. I think they just tried to be on the same piece of tarmac several times, and there was a little bit of rubbing and scratching and scuffing and jostling for position. But yeah, in the end it was an awesome race, but very, very tight, very, very close, and very, very competitive.
Yeah, and I believe in the second race of the evening, it actually came to a bit of a head, but Noller ended up taking the overall race win. An absolutely stunning drive by him from memory, actually, as well. Coming from, I think it was 10th on the grid, all the way up to the race lead. Stapleford was in second, putting up an absolutely amazing defence for most of the race. He just couldn't hold off Noller right at the end. Hayden was in 3rd, and Marshall 4th, and Brennan in 5th. And before we get right into qualifying, because qualifying has started at Brands Hatch GP, I'll just give you a quick rundown of the championship. So the top 6 in the championship, I'll just quickly cover because there's a bit of ballast in there as well. Nola with 36 points. In 2nd place, Marshall 35 points. And there's a bit of a gap between those two and 3rd place, so there's already a heating up for the top step of the championship so far. But Edmondson and Stapleford 26 and 25, they're 3rd and 4th. So again, almost bottom step of the podium. There's a good in-fight there. Brennan and Smith in 5th and 6th are actually drawing on championship points. They're on 20 points apiece. But because of the better results, I think, Brennan actually pipped Smith to 5th place, which actually works in Smith's favour because we will run down the ballast now. Nola has 30 kilograms of ballast on board, being at the top end of the championship. Marshall with 27, Edmondson with 24, Stapleford with 23, Brennan with 18, and Smith with 15, so increments of 3. Now we've got all the housekeeping out of the way. How do you think that's going to affect these drivers, Steve? Because it's going to be difficult around Brands Hatch Indy. There's plenty of undulations. Those with ballast, it's going to be difficult.
Yeah, definitely, and we've seen some of that in practice, that there's been, a little bit of variation. I mean, you've got the likes of Marshall, who last week was absolutely on it. This week he's sort of 6th in practice. Nola, I'm just looking through the timing screen now, and he's even further down. He's in 10th on the practice sheet. So it is slowing these boys up. I mean, we saw Marshall last week qualified 1.5 seconds faster than anybody else, which was an absolutely ridiculous thing to do, but he did it. Not sure we're going to see that this week. I don't think we will. I think it'll all be a lot closer. But just to touch on the race 2, the reverse grid of last week, we saw Nola make up 9 positions to win the race. Marshall made up 8 to finish 2nd. But I think Rich Hayden, he got the hard charger award last week as well, which gained him a point in the championship. He made up 12 positions, so that just shows how exciting the reverse grid in race 2 will be. But yeah, with the ballast, these guys are going to certainly be up against it, and they're going to be fighting hard.
Yeah, there's plenty of other drivers with ballast as well. The ballast goes down a fair few places after that, but we just wanted to give you the quick highlight of the top 6, and really the difference between, say, Nola and Marshall, 3 kilograms in it. It's not going to make that much of a difference between the two of them, but it is a massive difference. 30 kilograms to 0 is obviously a huge difference around such Brands Hatch GP. Speaking of brands, we are obviously getting some times in on the board now. So a couple of people have done a couple of flying laps, and one notable name that's popped up on the roster this week is actually Alex Toth-Jones. He's in 2nd place at the moment. He's one to look out for with 0 ballast on board as well, so he's going to be certainly putting his foot to the floor. He was one of the quickest guys in practice, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's the only guy in practice to get into the 1 minute 30. It was a 1 minute 30.9, but he's the only guy to get into that. The rest of them were 31.3, I think, was the next closest time. So he's certainly got the pace. Whether he can duplicate that pace now in qualifying, but we're certainly expecting very low 31s, 31.2 maybe for a pole position, somewhere around there.
Yeah, so we fully expect him. I mean, Rob Butler on pole position, currently holding pole position anyway. He doesn't have any ballast on board either, but like you just said, Toth-Jones, he's about 7/10 off where he's put the car in practice. Obviously, doing it in a qualifying session with only 10 minutes to go instead of unlimited laps is a little bit different. I mean, you were sat in the sort of drivers' chat for a good hour before, weren't you, Steve? Just listening to the sort of how the drivers were attacking the circuit and what they were discussing, and it's a fascinating insight, isn't it, to sort of see how the top guys are sort of processing the circuit, what kind of times they're pulling out there, and how they interact with each other as well.
Yeah, obviously, any sort of race driver chat room, any chat room online, there's a lot of banter going on. But yeah, definitely some serious chat about the ballast and how it's slowing some of them up. Toth-Jones, obviously very quick. There's also mentioning the tyres are staying very warm around the track. In the front left, if you're driving it too hard, pushing the front too much, you will suffer with overheating as well. So there's a couple of issues they've got to watch for. They've got to be smooth, and they've got to remain, as we said earlier, consistent as possible. And in qualifying, obviously, they don't have the push to pass. We need to remember that. So qualifying is no push to pass. Yeah,
very important. And for those of you who may be tuning in for the first time and haven't seen round one of the championship, or us explaining about the cars. Audi TTs, especially in the TT Cup, are front-wheel drive. So, as Steve was saying, if you're pushing the front on a little bit too much, you can overheat the tyres at the front end. You'll lose grip, you'll start to understeer, and that's really a massive problem in these cars. But obviously, it's heating the rear wheels up is important as well, because you don't want to be getting snake hips coming out of the drive. Well, they're doing exactly what Thornton's done there, basically, understeering off. But getting a bit of snake hips isn't ideal either. So oversteering is a big problem early on with these cars as well. You need to heat the rear wheels up as well.
Yeah, and it's good to see Butler. You know, he's up there in first at the moment on pole position, or currently in provisional pole. You know, he's standing around 12th in the championship, so he didn't have the best of rounds to open up. But you know, some of the comments I got from these guys during the week, when just messaged a few of them for some insights into what they're thinking about the cars, and they are all, and without bar none, as far as I can tell, they are all enjoying this car. They say it's great fun to drive. It's very easy to get to the limit of its performance and really drive it on the edge, but then that's when it comes into, you know, remaining smooth and keeping the tyres at the right temperature, you know, staying off the curbs where you need to, and just picking your lines and trying to get those best lap times out of the car.
Yeah, we are using AC, or a set of course, if anybody is wondering. So if you're fancying having a go yourself, I'm sure you'll be able to find the car online if it's not already on the original sim. But it's certainly one to be looking out for, and it's a challenging car, like Steve was saying, but it is very enjoyable. And these guys, as Steve was saying again, are certainly enjoying it. Richards has gone and put a good time in to go third at the moment. Toft Jones hasn't improved on his time yet, but I think, to be fair, that 135, potentially he was trying to get himself into a little bit of space as he attacked the final couple of laps that we have left in this qualifying session, because we only have 2 minutes 30 left there. Steve, it's going to be hard for anybody to really make a move, but Marshall, even with 27 kilograms on board, is doing well in fourth place.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say, out of the championship runners, you would say that Marshall is the one that's out of position, because if you look at him in fourth, he's doing incredibly well, because you've got Nola in seventh, McIntyre 8th, Stapleford 9th, Edmondson 10th. They're all sort of, you know, the championship runners, as it were. They're all sort of top 5, top 6 drivers. So he's really, really doing well. He's Marshall with that current fourth place.
Let's talk about the boost just for a couple of seconds as well, because obviously we are going to go into race one and the action might be so fun and frantic that we don't want to take our eyes off it and focus on anything else. But the boost, it's basically a button that these guys have got mapped to their wheels at home, and they can push it, and it provides 8 seconds of increased horsepower, doesn't it? It's a bit like almost opening DRS style sort of thing. They have, I believe it's 15 times during a session, so they can use it 15 times during a race, in a 15-minute race, obviously. I think they can use it a total of 4 times during a lap. Steve, you might be able to correct me if I'm wrong there. But once you've used those 15 times, that's it. You're sort of stuck. So you don't want to do it within the first 5 minutes, do you?
No, you don't. I mean, to be fair, you can use the push to pass, like you say, up to 15 times in a session. Once you've used 8 seconds of boost, there is a regeneration period. To forgive me, because I'm not exactly sure how many seconds that is, but there is a regen period. And to be honest, you've got to be careful where you use it, because the drivers are saying, you know, obviously if you use the push to pass at the wrong time, it can be as much of a hindrance. Obviously, when you're going through a corner, you don't necessarily want all that extra horsepower creating any sort of torque steer through the corners. So I mean, they're sort of saying to me that out of Surtees, if you're pressing it there through Pilgrim's Drop, you'll get a good boost there, and also out of Clark Curve across the start-finish line before Paddock Hill. Those are the 2 key points for the push to pass on Brands Hatch.
Yeah, and if you're smart enough as a driver as well, and you're being attacked by someone who's trying to use their boost to overtake you, you of course can in turn activate your boost to defend, can't you? So it does work both ways, which is always very useful. But these cars do have the tow as well, as we see McIntyre trying to go on a fast lap, just trying to flash the lights to get the car out the way. I don't know if he was hindered too much there. It looked like he was having to slide a little bit on the exit, but as he goes through Clark Corner, he's going to go across the line, and we're going to see whether McIntyre has improved. Quite a few drivers have already started to cross the checkered flag, which has dropped now. So as McIntyre goes through, he does get a little bit better. He jumps against Noller and Stapleford, and he ends up in 7th place. So not a bad showing by McIntyre at the moment. He hasn't got too much weight on board, so he'll be pretty happy with that, I imagine. He was a feisty racer, shall we say, in round 1 at the Nürburgring.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just talking about the push to pass very quickly for the viewers at home, where you see the checkered flags popping up now in the HUD, they're normally green. That indicates that the push to pass is ready to use. When the drivers are using it, that will turn orange. When it's regenerating, it will turn blue, and during the race you will see there will be a number in there which indicates how many push to passes they have left.
Yeah, so if you're sort of really attentive, you'll be able to keep an eye on that. Well, that's something we didn't actually know at the Nürburgring, was it, Steve? So we were sort of using a bit of guesswork, but now we know that, thanks to your investigative skills, we'll be able to bring up-to-date updates or notifications on that as well. So it looks like Butler is on pole position with Toth Jones. He didn't manage to make it into the 30s in qualifying. It shows how tight it is trying to get into qualifying. Richards is on 3rd place. Marshall in 4th, doing very well at the championship running, but he did qualify 1.6 seconds ahead of everybody else at the Nürburgring, so we shouldn't be too surprised. Smith is in 5th, and as I said, Smith is actually 6th in the championship, so he's carrying a little bit of ballast on board, as well as Brennan. He's in 6th position on the qualifying order. So Smith and Brennan, yet again, side by side, they just switched the order. There's fascinating races all amongst the championship at the moment, isn't there, Steve? Between 1st and 2nd, 2nd and 3rd, 5th and 6th, they're so close to each other.
Yeah, that's the beauty of the one-make championship, isn't it? It's down to driver skill. So they're just going to keep pushing. They're going to keep battling. And I think the whole season's going to be full of fantastic battles.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping. And Brands Hatch is one of those circuits that's going to promote every single on-track action as well. Side-by-side moments going into Druid, trying to throw it around the outsides through places like Surtees. There's always someone who tries it. It never normally comes off, but down at the dip as well and onto the back of the GP section, those drivers sort of like just every opportunity they'll see, if they think they can try and make the pass, someone on the grid's going to try that. So we're really looking forward to race 1 of the evening. We'll be able to bring you some interviews as well with a few of the drivers after race 1 and hopefully after race 2 as well. And that's always a great insight as well. We don't only look out for the podium sitters, do we, Steve? We look out for some drivers who maybe have had a fantastic race or made the most amount of passes, and we try and bring them in for a chat as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they get extra points for the fastest lap in this championship. They get a point for pole position. They also get an extra point for hard charger. So hard charger, obviously, is somebody who's made up the most positions essentially in a race. They will get an extra point for that, which is a great incentive to keep pushing no matter where you are, to be fair.
Yeah. So I think we've got some people to interview. We've got actually Rob Butler, who's on pole position, and I'll just be able to have a chat to Rob. Rob Butler, you're on pole position. That was an absolute flying lap. You must be pleased with that.
Yeah, absolutely. It was quite a good lap. Probably had a bit of 10th left, but not much left on the table really. Alex pushed me hard. I thought he was going to pop one in at the end, and I expected Matt to be there too. So yeah, very pleased to take the first pole in the TT Cup.
Yeah, well, last week didn't go so well for you, and I bet you were looking at the practice session and seeing that Alex was obviously putting in. He was the only driver to put in a 1 minute 30, I believe, and so you must have been slightly worried that he was going to put in a fast time at the end. But you managed to hold him off. Are you going to do the same in race 1? Do you reckon?
Yeah, look, hopefully we can work together and get out of here. It's going to be all about getting down into turn 1. It's probably the most difficult track in the world to start a front-wheel drive car with the hill. But yeah, let's see how we get on.
Well, I will say a quick good luck to you then, because we only have a couple of minutes till we start the race, so I'll let you get focused, Rob. And Alex Toth Jones, if you're there, 2nd place, not quite as quick as you were in practice. What's the plan for race number 1?
I think Rob said it, summed it up perfectly there. Just head down, get away, and then have a battle towards the end. I'm quite happy with P2. Rob put in a mega time. I touched the grass a little bit round the back and lost a bit of time, but don't think I had the lap that Rob did. But like I say, 15 minutes all to play for.
Yeah, how much practice have you done going into this session then? Because you obviously weren't here for the Nürburgring. Is it something you've been focusing on, or is it sort of one of these things where you just jumped in and seen what you can do?
I've done about 10 laps of practice in total. I jumped in at about 4 o'clock this afternoon because I wasn't meant to be able to do this one either. But when the opportunity came and I was still at home, I thought, here we go. So I'm quite happy with where I am.
Well, brilliant news, yeah, and it'll make all your race antics, I'm sure, even more impressive knowing you've only done that amount of practice. Well, I'll say good luck to the both of you, and you guys can go and enjoy your race, and I'm sure we'll enjoy you guys battle it out on the circuit as well. Try and put on a good show for us.
Thank you, mate. Will do.
And that was Rob Butler and Alex Toth Jones giving us a little bit of an insight to their plans. So, Steve, they're going to try and work together as best they can to try and get away. Is that something you'd be thinking of if you were in their position, or would you just be trying to go for that overall race victory? And I don't think Steve is with us for now, but yeah, as we I think the cars are starting to line up. We've got a couple of minutes left until we go racing for the first race of the evening. We've got 1 minute, in fact, I've just been told on the Discord. So, yeah, everybody, I'll just have a quick look as well and see if we've got anybody commenting on the chat as well. Evening, guys, it's Katie Eames. How's everyone doing, Carl Smith? Thanks for explaining the push to pass. Yeah, the push to pass is a massive, important sort of feature in this race, so it's definitely one to be looking out for. You can actually spot it on the back of the cars as well. Welcome to the live chat. My name is Ian Doyen. Yeah, nice to have everybody along as well in the chat. So please keep commenting. If you've got any questions, we'll try our best to answer them throughout the evening. And Steve, are you back with us?
I am, buddy. Yeah, just a mic issue there, but yeah, back. And I think the guys, like you say, it's a difficult grid to start from with the front wheel drive, and they'll certainly be pushing hard. But when everyone's got the same idea, I think the best laid plans and all that, it'll be a case of just see how things evolve and how things open up once they get going.
Yeah, and we're about to get going as the red lights come on. The engine notes rise for the Audi TT Cup here at Brands Hatch. Round 2 is a go. On race 1, Butler gets an absolutely storming start. Toth Jones having to defend hard against Richards and Marshall as they plummet into the paddock hill for the first time. Bit of off-track action in the background. I'm not sure who that is. I think that's Laramie out in the background, but Butler absolutely storming away from everyone. Toth Jones yet again having to defend from Richards on the outside of Druid. They managed to fall back in order as, yeah, that is Laramie in the background. So they go through Graham Hill Bend. Butler's already checked out, but there seems to be a bit of a battle between Marshall and Smith. 4th and 5th position, and the battle for 2nd as well is heating up. So there's already little bits forming, but luckily we've gotten through the first half without too much incident, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. And Butler, like you say, just really checked out there, and I just noticed he was on the push to pass, and he was really giving it rock all. But that's Fairclough on the grass.
Yeah, commentators curse there. Apologies, Fairclough. I said without incident, and I instantly saw that you'd fallen off the circuit. So, unfortunately there for Fairclough, he's back on, but he's going to have to go into the pits probably before he can get anything done. Into the GP section now as they dive down through Dingle Dell and through to the right hand. I should have this on my notes about what this circuit is, what this corner is called, but it's disappeared from my memory all of a sudden. But yeah, they're about to start back onto Clark Kerrs. So everybody's calmed down just a touch. As you said, Butler has disappeared into the distance, but here is Hayden against, I think that's Stansfield and Press. So all of a sudden there's a driver up the inside of Clark Kerrs as well. This is going to be sort of very tasty. All these cars look very similar, of course. It is a bit difficult to tell them apart until we get used to who's in what livery. But yeah, no, an interesting start to the race. But at the front, it all seems to have calmed down a touch.
Yeah, Butler's, like we say, he's checking out. He's getting his head down. He's going to get his consistency going. Alex Toth Jones has just managed to sort of fend off Richards in 3rd place, and he's obviously going to try and get his head down. Interesting just watching those push to passes now to see who's using them when, and then tactically how they're using them. But yeah, I think they're spreading out nicely. As we're just seeing Hayden there and Stansfield in the picture. And who's that? Is that in the background there?
I think that's Cook by the looks of it on the timing screen as he falls down the order. But yeah, this sort of midfield battle is going to be very interesting. These are a lot of drivers that you may often see going through reverse grid wins as well, because obviously it's a top 12 reverse grid. And actually Richards has overtaken Toth Jones for 2nd place as well at the front of the field. So that's an interesting sort of move, and that's a bit of an interesting dynamic as well, because it didn't look like Richards had the pace on Toth Jones ultimately, so he may well, although he's got a car ahead, be a cork in the bottle, but he does it. He dips the wheel on the outside of the circuit. His right-left wheel just dips onto the outside. It's so hard. There's no sort of easy braking zone at Brands Hatch GP, and after he did so well to get into 2nd place, Richards ends up down in about 9th position now, struggling to stay in the top 10. Toth Jones retains his 2nd place. There's a whole heap of cars, a whole host of cars, trying to get up the inside is Marshall, actually. We saw him absolutely flying in practice, 27 kilograms of ballast on board. is Marshall, second in the championship. He goes through to take second place, so twice in one lap. Todd Jones has lost second place to two different drivers.
Yeah, and that was a fine example of how the push-to-pass works, because Marshall was on the push-to-pass as he came out of Clark Curve, and he just drove past Alex Jones. But, you know, at the end of the day, Todd Jones has now got 14 push-to-passes left against Marshall's 11, so he's got a couple in the bank, so Marshall's going to have to be careful and defend hard.
Yeah, everyone, as we were saying before, but up the inside, in fact, goes Smith on Todd Jones, and Todd Jones has fallen down the order. He's lost out to championship leader Noller as well, who's come from 7th place on the grid, 8th place actually, I think he was, and now he's in 4th. And Todd Jones, in his first evening of racing in the TT Cup, has gone he just seems to be dropping like a pebble at the moment. This is Neil versus Press. Neil versus Press goes side by side and into the GP loop very sensibly. They sort of all calmed down just a little bit, but on the outside there, I think that's Neil on the outside. He's going to just rejoin the circuit now, but again, he's running wide and he's having an awful time at the back end of the circuit so far. Neil ends up having to sort of bow out of this little race that we have for the mid-pack, but here is on board with Noller against trying to catch Smith, and Todd Jones trying to take back his position. It's not been a good race for Todd Jones so far.
No, he's in the wars, but all that's helping is Butler, who's now 2.4 seconds away in the lead. So, yeah, it's definitely helped Butler. Marshall's obviously going to try and track him down now, and Marshall's just put in his fastest lap of the race with a 1:31.6, but that's only matching Butler's lap times.
Yeah, Todd Jones goes through on Noller after using a push-to-pass up the inside of Paddock Hill Bend. They're still having to defend against each other. Noller trying to throw it around the outside, but he's not quite able to do it. Is he going to have the inside for Graham Hill Bend? It's not a place you'd often dive up the inside if you weren't trusting 100% of your opponent that he wasn't going to turn into you. If anybody needs a reminder of how that can go sometimes, look at Colin Turkington and Matt Neal last year at Brands Hatch GP. It was going to be a disaster, and luckily these guys have a bit more respect for each other, I think. But as Thorne, Press, Hayden and Stansfield all fight it out, this is actually for pretty much the pole position in the reverse grid, isn't it? Because it's guaranteed to be 12th place, Steve. So whoever gets 12th, 11th and 10th are going to be starting right at the front of the field for the second race. So this is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. It throws another tactic into the race, and obviously, like you say, Hayden now is technically on pole position for race 2, but obviously we've got 9 minutes of this race to go, and that's not decided as yet. But definitely, you know, get into the top 12, 12th, 11th, 10th for you at the sharp end of race 2.
Here is the fight between Todd Jones, Noller and Brennan, who's actually joined in on the mix. So these three drivers have actually dropped away from the likes of Smith, Marshall and Butler at the top of the field. Butler's actually getting reined in a little bit by Marshall, who seems to have turned his pace on a little bit, but he may well have used quite a few push-to-passes. I can't quite see close enough to see how many he's got left, but I imagine Butler will have quite a few left, so he'll be able to fend off any attacks quite easily. But you can see a couple of drivers. This is the fight for, well, the bottom right of your screen is the fight for 12th place, with focusing on Hayden and that gap that he's now got. So everybody's calmed down a little bit as well. And yeah, Steve, everything's sort of, well, race 1 is often a little bit of a reasoned approach, shall we say. It's sort of, it's not necessarily everybody throwing everything at it. It's more of a, let's just get through this race. We've got a good position thanks to qualifying.
Yeah, I mean the qualifying, it's a traditional race. It's you know, they all get them on merit, and the race is a lot cleaner in the respect that, you know, you haven't got the fast drivers trying to get through, shall we say, some slightly slower drivers. But you know, they're all putting in a good show. Butler looks like Marshall is reeling Butler in. He's gained half a second on him, so he's slowly but surely pulling him in, and indeed his last lap was 0.5 of a second quicker than Butler's, so that battle's not over yet. But as you were pointing out, Butler has not had to use as many push-to-passes, although he's got 9 left and Marshall 8, so there's not much in it. He's just going to be looking to you know, keep his head down and try and maintain that 2-second gap if he can.
Yeah, Marshall, second place in the championship at the moment with 35 points. Only Noller ahead of him, who's currently in 5th position. He's got 36. So at the moment, Marshall's going to go onto the top of the championship as they close up between Clark Curve, between Stapleford and Richards. And Richards maybe well going for a move. He's got the, he's not using the boost yet, actually. He's just been using the toe and sort of momentum that he carried through Clark Curve to get through and pass on Stapleford, who obviously did a really good job in race 2 last week, and he came on the stream afterwards in the interview and was really enjoying himself. but he can't quite make it move stick this time. He's flashing his lights. Not entirely sure why, because I thought that was a pretty clean move from Richards, but maybe he's just saying, okay, if you're going to go through, let's catch up to the lot in front and have a good race with them.
Yeah, maybe just flashing the lights in the braking zone as a distraction method, maybe, but it didn't work, and Richards got the move done very cleanly, and like you say, without the aid of push to pass, he just did that on slipstream and got the inside line into paddock hill and went through in a very controlled manner and kept the position.
Yeah, Brennan with the push to pass on. It's not on anymore, but he's just done enough to get alongside. It's going to be very difficult to go around the outside of a driver here. He's going to really try it, though. There was always going to be a nudge of contact, and he's forced onto the grass. That could have ended an awful lot worse, but now Edmondson is going to try the move on him. He managed to fend off Edmondson's attack and approach, but now he's dropped away from Noller, who was quite savvy there. He knew how to defend through the corner, and Brennan he just had a bit too much overspeed, shall we say. He didn't really have any choice but to go along the outside of the driver, but as Edmondson actually falls away to 8th place because he went a bit wide, and Richards has gotten back through. So Richards, after a sort of poor second or third lap, he's actually starting to ease his way back up to score some crucial points.
Yeah, like you say, Hawthorne bends there where he went on the outside of him. That's not a place you want to be. You're always going to end up on the grass. But yeah, Noller just defended that really well, and he just kept his calm and knew what he had to do. But you know, Brennan's he's putting some pressure on him. He'll have another go at him very soon, I would think.
Yeah, Brennan, he was one of the stars of the show in the second race last week. As I said, if anybody is wondering what they want to do with the hour after this, before 10 o'clock, say, well, I thoroughly recommend you go back and have a look at race round 1 at the Nürburgring, or if nothing else, have a look at the highlights reel that we've got of it, because that sort of showed off some of the excitement, and it was great production value as well. So, yeah, obviously this broadcast is done by VRRC, but the actual broadcast itself, in terms of the cameras and the commentary and everything, is by Simply Race as well. So they do offer some brilliant services, as well as the opportunity to race your mates in a live setting as well. So they have like 15 simulators all around their centre. If you want to have a Google of them, and down in Milton Keynes, then by all means, it's brilliant to have on. Some fantastic driving going on, says Alan Rowland on the chat. He's also looking forward to doing the race as well, but yeah, he's very complimentary of the driving, as are we, Steve. It has been fairly clean, it's been consistent, and a good measured drive from all round, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. It's measured, consistent, and you know, we're just looking at Stapleford and Richards at the moment, and they're running very, very close together. These guys, as we saw, Noller and Brennan, and you know, a few of the other guys, they do run literally bumper to bumper, you know, with minimal contact, but very, very respectful racing. Just seeing Hayden's gone up from that 12th place he was in, he's up to 10th now, so he's made a couple of places up, as well as we're seeing Smith now on Marshall into the inside at Druids.
Yeah, good move there done by Smith, and I didn't actually clock that he was close enough to make that any kind of move, but he has used a few push to passes more than Marshall. He's got 4 left, Marshall's got 6. So that has pretty much left Butler to drive his own race, it has to be said, with a 3.2 second gap now instead of a bordering around the 2 second mark. And Butler will be able to save some push to passes as Marshall and Smith both activate them. Here goes Brennan. Noller's already activated his push to pass. Brennan is pushing to pass as well, shall we say, and he's going to be on the outside. Noller's going to defend exactly the same way that he did last time against Brennan. And here they go through Hawthorne's. Brennan's learnt his lesson this time. Make sure he doesn't go flying around the outside. Try and get a good run through Hawthorne. And there is 2 potential overtaking opportunities through here, and if you get a good enough run, which unfortunately I don't think Brennan's quite close enough to do, you could try and force up the inside of Dingledale, but it is always a bit of a tricky one. It's a bit of a blind apex, isn't it, Steve? It's a difficult one to get the braking zone for, and then it's a blind apex, and you have to get the car right over for the left-hander to go back onto the Indy circuit. Yeah,
absolutely. It's a corner of faith. You've got to know when to turn in, because, like you say, it's blind, but it's so fast as well. You literally hop the curb on that corner. But as we see now, Brennan's on the inside and he's activated the push to pass, but so has Noller. So it's just it's an equal drag race down to Paddock Hill now.
Yeah, actually, it might be advantage Richards. They go 3 wide. Brennan on the inside of Paddock Hill. Noller on the middle. Oh, Richards just giving a push on Noller, who's actually going to be losing out on 2 positions. They're still 3 wide as they go into Druids. Brennan still on the inside. Pink in the middle. Pink on the outside. Gray on the inside. As Brennan gets that position done, Noller is actually just got his nose ahead going into Graham Hill Bend. He's going to be on the inside, and Richards has to... As you know, Richards is the driver who's up to 6th place, so Richards was on the inside of Graham Hill Bend, so all of a sudden Noller's gone from 5th down to 7th in the space of about 2 corners. 3 abreast through Braddock Hill and Druids. Would you ever? Well, I think his underwear will probably be a different colour. Let's put it that way. As he was doing that, as Nola ends up having to back out of both of them, Steve.
Yeah, it was very respectful though, wasn't it? Very clean. You know, there was not too much pushing or rubbing, as it were. They were pretty clean through there, very forceful, but really respectful at the same time. And no one's given up on that position yet, as we're watching Brennan defending now from Richards, and Nola just sat him waiting.
Yeah, absolutely. This isn't the fight for a podium position. Marshall and Smith are still going hammer and tongs, it's worth noting as well, at the top of the order. So Butler is currently on first place, Smith in second, with only 1 push to pass left. Marshall in third has 5 actually. So yeah, Marshall may well be just using all them on the final lap of the race to get back up to second place. Here goes Richards, yes, sorry, I'm getting Nola and Richards mixed up far too often. Here goes Richards up the inside of Brennan. Brennan's going to be taking the optimal racing line as they break late. He's going to be on the outside. Richards slots his way through. Brennan tries to get the cut back. He managed to fend off Nola. Will he be able to go at the inside of Richards for the Druids? It's going to be tight. Richards runs a little wide. He gives him racing room, Brennan, but he's going to be on the inside for Graham Hill. So Brennan may well end up losing out if Nola tries to throw up the inside of Graham Hill, Ben. Luckily, he doesn't, because that was always going to end in tears. And they're as they were for one more lap.
Yeah, absolutely. And just looking at the front guys now, Marshall's dropped down to 4th place, so he's obviously made a mistake. He was sitting pretty up there in sort of 3rd place, challenging Smith for 2nd, as Butler's checked out in the lead by 3.7 seconds now.
Yeah, Butler's actually got a couple of push to passes in hand, but here goes Richards on the inside of Brennan, so Brennan's still trying to find a way past. He isn't able to do that, and then Nolan's probably sat there thinking, what on earth do I have to do to find a way through these two, because it's pretty much impossible for him at the moment, as they're going side by side nearly everywhere. But this is Brennan's opportunity, and I told you about the cutback. Going through the right-hander is so important through Dingle Dell. He's got the inside. He tries to carry the momentum around the outside. Richards, I tell you what, that's absolutely brilliant racing room left by all 3 drivers, because that could end in disaster so easily. And we've seen it so often, even in real-life racing, how that can just end up with 2 cars flying off the edge of the circuit and straight into the Armco, which, of course, there isn't much of a gap between the Armco and the circuit, but they're back fighting each other yet again into Paddock Hill Band. And I think this may be the last lap of the race, unless Butler's started with a couple of seconds to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Side by side through Paddock Hill again, just looking to see who gets the inside line now as they head up to Druids, and that's looking like it could be Richards and Brennan side by side again.
Yeah, Brennan actually did a really good job through Paddock Hill Bend to carry the momentum around the outside. He's actually going to have the momentum around the outside. There's a little bit of touching. There's even more touching. Nola's nudged Richards through, and nudged Richards round, I should say. And Nola ends up going up the inside of Richards. So Brennan finally got the move done after 2 brilliant sort of momentum carrying lines around the outside of Richards. And then as Richards tried to tuck back in to Graham Hill Bend, there was a bit of contact between the 2 of them. Nola saw an opportunity to go up the inside on the apex. Maybe there wasn't quite enough room for his Audi TT to go up, but he tried to force the move anyway. And we are where we are, shall we say, as Brennan in 5th place, Nola now in 6th, Richards down to 7th place, and actually Stapleford and Edmondson have actually joined the fray. And if we do have one more lap after this, it could be a 5-way battle for the top 5. In the top right of your corner is Butler as he starts to go around the Clark curve for what potentially is the final lap of the race, final corner of the race for race 1 of Brands Hatch GP. He's going to take the checkered flag. He's weaving, so he knows a bit more than we do. It is the checkered flag for race 1 of the evening towards Butler, as he did check out just like he wanted to in his interview. From qualifying, from lights to flag, Butler is the race victor as they come across the line. Smith, Tough Jones, and Marshall are the top 4. Coming across in this battle is Brennan, Nola, Richards, Edmondson, and Stapleford. Wow, what a race we had there. Steve, that was very good driving by Butler, but to be fair, pretty clean driving from everyone else as well.
Yeah, absolutely, and we could have just done with 4 or 5 more laps, because Edmondson and Stapleford could have really made that a 4 or 5 car battle very, very interesting. As we're looking now at Cut coming round Clark Curve for the final time and looking to finish the race in 17th.
Yeah, we've had a couple of drivers all the way down here, actually. Fairclough was a driver who we thought had a good pace in practice, but just like the Nürburgring, he had good pace in practice. He ends up down the order for race 1 of the evening. Keep an eye for 12th place as well, because obviously they'll be on pole position. That's actually Neil. So he'll be on pole position for race 2. As we see Sutton, it's not Ash, don't get too excited, in 20th position. But a newcomer to the championship, not had the best first race of the evening, but I'm sure he'll be back for the second to bring us some good fair racing, and hopefully we'll be able to bring us some interviews sooner rather than later with a few of the podium sitters and maybe some movers and shakers from down the field. But Butler seemed pretty unstoppable in that race, didn't he, Steve?
Yeah, definitely. He did what he said. I mean, within the first couple of corners, he was nearly a second up. He was 8/10 away. And once they started battling for second place, then obviously he's in clean air and he's going to keep his head down and he's going to put some fast laps in. And indeed, he did put the fastest lap in of the race with a 31.26, I believe.
Yeah, no, really good from him, and I'm sure we'll be able to I know we've had a quick chat with him when he qualified on pole, but it'd be interesting to see really what his view was from race 1. I suppose it probably wasn't that hard for him, really, because obviously he just got into the race lead, but we'll be able to have a chat to him now, in fact, and if I just get this set up. Rob Butler, you said you were on pole position, you said you wanted a nice clean race, just get away, and sort of that's that. That's exactly what happened, so congratulations on the race 1 victory.
Thank you, mate. Yeah, it was hard at the start. I knew Alex was going to be quick behind. I don't know what happened. I looked in my mirror and I seen Dave there for a bit, and I could see him using his boost to try and catch me. So I was just trying to manage the boost throughout the race to keep the tyre on and get away. And thankfully, I got a gap, and once I was away and they started battling, it was a little bit easier from there. It was just about driver management from that point. So
yeah, you got about a 2-second gap, didn't you? Even when Dave Marshall was there up behind you, but you just used that push to pass at the right times, weren't you? Maintaining that gap, and all of a sudden Marshall makes a mistake, and with about 4 or 5 minutes left of the race, you pretty much have clean air for the entirety, and that must feel pretty good when you're lapping one of the best circuits in the country, one of the most challenging, but one of the best. And you've got pretty much no one behind you to worry about.
You've no idea how little mistakes Dave Marshall makes. To see him make a mistake was like a godsend. I ran wide. I was looking at the gap coming across the line, and all of a sudden I was at the braking zone at turn 1. I nearly threw it away. But yeah, look, delighted to beat these guys. These are some of the best sim racers, real world racers in the world, and to drive away and win in a one-make series by four odd seconds, I'm very pleased.
Yeah, you should be. You got about a couple of minutes before you go into race 2, so we will let you go, Rob, as soon as you've given a shout out to anybody else who you want to as well, just before we say goodbye. Yeah,
just a massive thanks to Rich Hayden at VRRC, Dave Marshall for putting on this championship, and most importantly, you guys for making the stream so enjoyable to watch. So thank you, guys, and I look forward to trying to speak to you after race 2.
Brilliant. Well done, Rob, and congratulations on race 1. Go and focus for race 2 now, starting from 12th position. So that was Rob Butler. He obviously was pole position and race 1 winner, like we've just said. And have a chat to Isaac Smith. Smith, we didn't really focus too much on your race for that 11th place, but it looked like, especially at the beginning, we sort of had a few sort of cuttings towards you guys. It looked like a tough race in that midfield.
We finished second.
Second, sorry, yeah, my bad. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, we had a good tussle with Dave. He was quick, but he'd pushed the car too much and used too much boost at the beginning of the race, and I just kept sat on the car and waited till the end to be able to get a go on Dave, and we pulled through and finished P2.
Yeah, brilliant. And apologies about that before. It's because my timing tower has now put you in 11th place because of the reverse grids. That confused me a little bit. But yeah, it must be pretty difficult. And there was no real catching Rob at the front, was there? As soon as you checked out, that was pretty much it. It was difficult to maybe try and rein him back in.
Yeah, it's very difficult with the added ballast. Obviously, we're 5th in the championship at the moment, so we've got 15 kilos in. So it affects the car actually quite a bit over a long time. But yeah, he's clearly very fast.
Yeah, well, Brennan's actually pretty much your championship rival at the moment. You and him are on equal points on 20 points. Obviously, you've gained a little bit now, so maybe you'll start thinking about further up the order, maybe trying for that top 3 position.
Yeah, well, we're going to be pushing in this race, so yeah, definitely.
Well, good luck. You'll start in 11th, and yeah, I hope to sort of track your progress throughout the rest of the evening. Good luck. Is there anybody like to give a quick shout out before we go into race 2?
Yeah, I'll give Rob a big shout out. he's my sponsor, and he always does a top job, and he's a top lad. So cheers, Rob.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Isaac, and good luck for race 2.
Thank you.
So that was Isaac Smith, and I think, Steve, because we've only got about a minute left before we go into the next race, we did have Alex Toth-Jones to talk before the next race, so we'll let him focus and jump into the second race. What do you expect? Top 12 reverse grid. Brands Hatch has clearly proven that you can overtake ground here. Is it going to be carnage, or is it going to be some sort of more regulated racing, shall we say?
No, I would never use the word carnage with VRRC races, to be fair to these guys. They are, the top sim racers, real world drivers. There will be some bumping and rubbing as they'll try and force the doors open a little bit, but, rubbing's racing, and reverse grids always, they're always hard fought. And as the lights go red now, so let's over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully there will be no carnage, as I said, as Steve said. But we are away for race 2 of the evening at Brands Hatch for round 2, and it's a good start at the front of the field by Neil. Thorne as well having a good start, but up the inside goes Rich Hayden, flying up the inside of Paddock Hill Bend. He was saying how much he hates Paddock Hill Bend. He certainly used it to his advantage there. There is a big off by Neil into Druid, and I think that might really affect the race leader. He had such a big lead, though, that actually didn't affect him at all, but it's affecting them further back as they come out of Druid, and I think that is Brennan and Stapleford falling down the orders, so a couple of drivers falling off the circuit there coming out of Druid. It's very easily done. I've done it plenty of times myself. But Neil, overall, he had a bit of a tank slapper through Druids, Steve, but he's able to just pick it back up, and now he's still in first place, amazingly.
Yeah, I was just seeing, I'm not sure who that was that went sideways through Surtees, but we're just seeing these front-wheel drive Audis, if you can keep your foot buried, and it has, who's that that's just gone off into the wall very hard there on...
that was Butler, so that was Rob Butler, our race 1 winner and pole position sitter. He's falling, tumbling down the orders, though, even getting more off in the around Hawthorns, and I said, will there be carnage? I didn't mean they'd be starting to hit each other necessarily. This is probably what more I was thinking about, as they do come on and hit each other at Hawthorns. So, a little bit of mishaps towards the back of the field. Matt McIntyre, who just can't buy luck today. He's ended up having a really poor race 1 through contact. He's having a poor race 2 through contact as well. And up the inside, by the looks of it, goes Richards on... around the outside goes Richards on Thorne for second place. And, we saw Richards. He had the pace in race 1, but he didn't quite have the sort of driver racecraft, shall we say. He looks like he's in a good position now to try and take it to race 2.
Yeah, absolutely. And Edmondson's up into second place. He was, he had fast pace at the Nürburgring, and he's definitely a championship lead contender. As he's just got turned there as they're going into Druids, and they've completed that manoeuvre and spun him right round.
Yeah, and also we've had a change. Neil's actually dropped away as well. I'm not entirely sure where Neil is. He's down in 11th place, so he went from 1st to 11th, which has given Richards the race lead through Paddock, and they're falling off the outside of Graham Hill as well now. We're on board with Hayden, who's got a bit of a flapping front end bonnet and damage to the rear of his car, to the right of his car, to the front of his car. He's really been in the wars, and that shows how tough it is in the reverse grid race, especially in that mid-pack. And we're on board now with Marshall, who's got Brennan up ahead of him, Thorne and Richards. So realistically, if you're looking at championship order, Marshall is again your top championship driver. He's in second place in the championship. I think he's now in first, to be fair, but he's carrying 27 kilos on board. Brennan up there as well. He was in 5th place in the championship. He's now in 6th place in the championship, but he's in 3rd place overall. And then obviously you got Richards, who was very, very quick in race 1. But as I said before, Steve, he didn't quite have the racecraft. He's in the best position to use it now, though. He's got 13 pushed passes left, and he can just sort of measure that gap.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just on board now with Hayden, and we can just see that the steering wheel is slightly out of line, but that's just representative of the damage that he's picked up in some of those early incidents. So that car's not going to be a lot of fun to drive, as we can see him just constantly steering left down the straight. So he's up against it as Rich now, as we see him trying to defend against Press, I believe that is, that's just literally gone round the outside of him at Paddock Hill.
I think that was Noller actually who went round the outside, but Press is probably not going to be too far behind him sooner rather than later. Actually, Hayden went back up the inside through Druids as well, so really good driving from him with a damaged car, to be fair, against what is a championship contender with Noller. But on the outside there, Richard now goes, and Noller back up the inside through Surtees, and I think he's not going to have much of an option to challenge back, as we're looking at Marshall now 4/10 of a second behind Brennan. Richards has checked out with 2.7 second gap in the race lead. He's using his push to pass just to make sure he's regulating that battle. And obviously this is going to be where it starts heating up. Smith, Marshall and Brennan all fighting for the second place.
Yeah, and Richards has now got that comfortable 2.7 second lead out in the front. He's not setting the track on fire with his lap times at the moment. His best is 32.6, which is the fastest lap of the race. But I'm sure the lap times are going to get a little bit quicker as some of these faster guys manage to get through the field a little bit. As Marshall's now, he's up into third place, and he's on the tail end of Brennan.
Indeed, yeah, and it's likely to see if we, with the sort of push to pass and the toe that these drivers can put into place, about how big this gap can get. As a big off tank slapper moment from Neil there. We saw him going into Druids in the first lap of the race. He's doing it through the left hand there as they go back onto the Indy circuit. So Neil not really enjoying the setup of his car by the looks of it. Whether he's got damage or not, it might be a different thing. But Stapleford's got through him, with Marshall now under attack from Smith. Big dive on the brakes there by Smith, really closing up the gap. But as soon as he, everything he gained going into the corner, he's lost coming out of it. So side-by-side action between, I think that's Hayden and Edmondson. Edmondson on the outside, Hayden on the inside. Both cars look a bit about as broken as each other's. And that's actually pressed up ahead of them as well in the orange TT by the looks of it. So these three cars, damaged as they are, they're still going at each other.
Yeah, absolutely, battling for every single position on the track, which is always great to see. Like we said earlier, Hayden's really up against it with that car. I think he's picked up a hell of a lot of damage in those early incidents, but he's still racing, and he's still racing competitively with these guys, and really keeping them honest.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've just had someone on the comments as well, Alan Rowlands. He's come on the YouTube comments, and he's actually said that Stapleford is apparently only 14 years old, which is, I mean, it's pretty incredible that he's, especially in the Nürburgring race too, he's really bringing it to a lot of these drivers who are very experienced sim racers. So fair play to Stapleford. That's very good going. But Hayden and Edmondson are just still going hammer and tongs at it. And we saw Hayden's on board before. He was pretty much having to steer left as he was going down the straight. So what he's doing with this car right now is very, very impressive. He must have practiced plenty of times to be very familiar with the machinery underneath him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Edmondson, who's chasing him down at the moment, his last lap was over a second and nearly a second and a half faster. So he's definitely got the pace on him. It's just a case of getting the move done, which he's trying to go around the outside of him in Paddock Hill there.
Yeah, we're on board with Marshall, who does now have Smith for company as well. He hasn't been able to get past Brennan, who is himself a very fast driver. He's proven it in a couple of races before, especially race 2 at the Nürburgring. And to be fair, he was no slow chicken here in race 1 of the evening either. But Richards really has just checked out. He's keeping that sort of gap very respectable as these three drivers all fight it. He doesn't really have to worry too much, does Richards. He has 10 push to passes. He's actually using his 11th as we speak. But with 8 minutes to go, 2.7 seconds, 10 push to passes left. Is there really much of a threat from Richards unless he makes a mistake?
Possibly not so much a threat on pace, because they are pretty much lapping within a couple of tenths of each other. But as we heard from the drivers in the first race, they do run wide, they hit the grass. It does only take one small mistake and all of a sudden that 2 seconds has disappeared, and we've seen that happen before.
We have seen it happen before, to be fair, and we do love the action that these one-make series sort of throw up at us. It's all about driver ability and driving mistakes. As you see a bit of a mistake there as well at the top left of your screen. I think that was Hayden versus Edmondson, and Hayden did go just a touch wide. Edmondson tried to put his nose up the inside, but it wasn't quite happening for him as they go through Clark Curve. They're settling back down now. That Hayden's got a bit tank slapper. He's actually kept it in a straight line, but he's got off the circuit. So Edmondson does finally go through and take 8th position. And Hayden's car, I mean, it's amazing that he was able to keep that position for so long. He's now down to 10th position. But yeah, when you're having to turn left to go straight, it's always going to be a bit of a difficult one, especially around a track like Brands Hatch GP. It's pretty unforgiving, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to be fair, these lads, they will adapt fairly quickly to what they're driving, and they just make the best of it, and that's what Rich was doing. But we're seeing Marshall now right up behind Brennan, 2.5 tenths at the back, so he's going to they're both using push to pass now, and as they go up through Surtees to the Pilgrims Drop and then into Hawthorne. So it'll be interesting to see if Marshall can get alongside Brennan at all, but it's not looking like it.
Yeah, I mean, this is a bit of a problem, shall we say? I wouldn't say it's a problem necessarily. It's a bit of a tactic between when you use the push to passes, because we said before that you can use the push to pass to attack. Well, you can also use the push to pass to defend as well. You do get the slipstream if you're the attacking car, but around a track like Brands Hatch GP, the slipstream doesn't really come into effect as much as it would at other tracks, say like the Nürburgring or around somewhere like Silverstone, or will do in Imola in 2 weeks' time. But yeah, it is an advantage, but Marshall's actually whacked push to pass on now. So he's actually trying to enable that to go around the outside of Brennan. Luckily, it turns off for him just before he gets into Clark Curve, so there's no torque understeer. But as they go onto the start-finish straight, Brennan actually whacks it on, and so does Smith. So Marshall could have left himself open a little bit here to Smith, and you can see that gap just closing up a little bit more, but it doesn't really seem to be helping them at all throughout this race. But Brennan goes defensive into Druid. Here goes Press, and we're flitting to Brennan now as Marshall tries to fly around the outside. Smith is going to try and get his nose up behind Brennan to maybe force him off the track, and there goes Marshall. Being forced off the track, he's going to have the inside for Graham Hill-Ben to defend into it from Smith, but this is sort of gold dust for Brennan, who seems to have got just a touch of gap now as Marshall defends on Smith just through Surtees as they come out and through the onto the longest straight of the race, onto the GP loop. Brennan will be having the push to pass activated, and he'll be very, very thankful that Smith has started to attack Marshall now.
Yeah, absolutely. Brennan's got a little bit of breathing space now, almost a second, as these two start battling it out, as Marshall and Smith are going hammer and tong. We saw there wasn't much of a gap between them as they came through the Pilgrim's drop, but fantastic racing, and Marshall's just defending that position very well.
Yeah, he did get away with it slightly. The fact that he was forced off the circuit, but that managed to be able to come back on and defend. He uses all the track and more as they go through Sheen's curve, going down through Sterling's, and now onto the Indy track. But it is Richards who's still got a 2.6 second gap. He's also got an extra push to pass than anybody else behind him as well, as we're on board on the top left hand side of your screen with O'Farrell very close to Hayden, who seems to be dropping down the order. As we said, he's very impressive. He's actually, he went down to 10th position, Hayden, against O'Farrell. He manages to overtake him back to 9th place, but he's still going hammer and tongs, and there's a push to pass. You can see the visual representation of the extra couple of horsepower that it gives you as he just comes up the backside of Richards, straight up the inside into Paddock Hill Bend. O'Farrell looks like he's going wide through. He didn't make the apex, which meant he had to bump Hayden off, and I'm not sure if Hayden's actually managed to rejoin the circuit. He has. He's going up the inside of Druids now, so it's a big move, and I think, to be fair, O'Farrell may have let him have that one, so that may well have been good sportsmanship for that one, Steve.
Yeah, great battling between those two. As you say, Hayden had dropped back down to 10th originally, but he'd fought back and got past Edmondson, as we just see Hayden just really using the track and some then, as he went really wide in the grass but kept the foot in through Surtees now, and he's on the O'Farrell's on the push to pass, but so was Hayden. Yeah,
a couple of drivers that we're having a look at as well. Right at the bottom of your timing tower on the left hand side, we've got a fair few drivers DNFing, 5 in total: Stansfield, Laramie, and then a couple of big names: Fairclough, McIntyre and Toth Jones. So Toth Jones really not sort of enjoying himself in the second race of the evening here. Obviously, he only did about 10 laps worth of practice. He's obviously very quick, but it's hooking together that speed as well as obviously all the other cars on track. And that's something that these drivers would have been practicing throughout the week. And as Toth Jones only had 10 laps before he went into this race, he was always going to struggle a little bit, Steve.
Yeah, definitely. But we've just seen, Smith and Marshall battling out now, which is giving Brennan a little bit of room, as we're seeing Smith and Marshall going side by side through Paddock Hill.
Yeah, they are indeed. And it looks like Smith has got past Marshall, and he's taking over 3rd place. And that's going to be... It's not really that detrimental to Marshall. His championship rival Nolla is still behind him, but only by 1 place. So he's got a 3.7 gap to him. But obviously, that's not really going to help Marshall as much as he would perhaps like, shall we say, in the championship standings. But it's going to still aid him a little bit. He's going to still pull away from his championship rival. But obviously, he would have rather had the podium position.
Yeah, definitely. And just a quick mention that, we've got Butler down in 14th, our race 1 winner. So obviously the second race has not been kind to him, although he has got the fastest lap of the race with a 31.1. So he's had the pace, but obviously he's not had the luck of the run of the luck, should I say, in race 2.
I think he ended up having a big off moment through Pilgrim's drop. So, yeah, he ended up, he's actually a lap down. So he probably came into the pits, got a repair on the car and got back out. And that's why he's probably sticking in fastest lap times with a bit of free air around him. Yep. So he will get a point, Butler. But as you said, it's not ideal for him after taking race 1 victory.
No, definitely not, and it's looking like Smith and Marshall have sort of spread out a little bit. They've all got a bit of clear air with 1 minute left on the clock, so a couple of laps left, because obviously it's race time plus 1 lap, so I think they'll get 2 laps in. But you know, it's been some very, very fast competitive racing, some rubbing, you know, some door banging, but these guys up at the front, they certainly know how to race and they certainly know how to defend.
Absolutely, and if anybody is watching out there on the comments or anything, do let us know. Obviously, we've had Nürburgring, now we've had Brands Hatch, we've got Catalonia next week, and we've got Imola in race 4. So do let us know what your favourite track out of those 4 is, whether it's a couple of tracks maybe you've not seen before, or maybe it's one that you're just looking forward to, or you know will provide great racing in the TT Cup. Do let us know and be able to sort of have a read through them before we end the stream tonight. This is Hayden back on board. He has had to give up the position to O'Fowl as they're running a little bit too wide. And the way that car's moving around, it looks like he's got so much more damage. It almost looks like his suspension has been shot as well.
Absolutely. I mean, Rich Hayden, he's got to get 10 out of 10 for his effort tonight in this race 2 alone. You know, I mean, he's been battling hard all the way, and he's not had the best car under him, it has to be said. But he's not given up. He's kept pushing, and he's fought back and he's gained positions back.
Yeah, that's reminiscent. That front bumper's reminiscent of some almost Ginetta Junior style action, isn't it? Really, with the fact that they always lose their bonnets as well. Luckily, it's not flapping up and distracting him too much. He goes wide, and actually, he may well lose out on Stapleford. He's going to fly up the inside into Sheen's curve, and he clips the inside. Nicely done. As long as he doesn't run too wide, he keeps it under control, and that's the position gone the way of Stapleford into the top 10 for the 14-year-old. So really good driving by him. And Hayden, as you said, full respect to him, but he's when you got a damaged car, you got a damaged car. There's no real driving around you, and everybody else around you has still got the setup that they started with.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm glad you compared the car to juniors and not Rich, because I think it's a long time since he's been compared to a junior. But you know,
not that old.
Richard's on his final lap now. He's got just a shade under a 3-second gap, so he's got 5 push to passes left. So he's really run a conservative race regarding push to passes. He's just done what he needs to do, and he looked like he was saving those in case anyone caught him to defend. But that's not going to happen now by the looks of it. He's got a solid 3-second gap. Brennan and Smith behind with Marshall. Looks like Marshall's challenging Smith. He's very, very close.
Yeah, it is actually. So I don't believe they've actually got any push to passes left on their cars at all, because they don't have any numbers on the green section next to their timing tower. But here is Marshall trying to fly around the outside of Sheen. I've tried that myself, and it really didn't go well for me, and he hasn't tried it now, so well done to Marshall. Up the inside of Sterling's, perhaps no, too far back, but as they round out down into the Indy circuit for Clark Curve for the final time, through clearways goes Richards. Through Clark Curve, he's going to come onto the Brabham Straight to finally take race 2, checkered flag of the evening. And, well, it's thoroughly deserved going the way of Richards with a couple of push to passes left. Brennan in second place with Smith in third. Marshall comes over the line in fourth. And he has gained on the championship rival, Nolla, who is about to come across the line in 5th position. This is the fight for the top 10 with Stapleford, Hayden. Quite a long way back, but Stapleford's gone wide through Clark Curve. Is this going to be a drag line to the line? It is, and it's, well, it looks like it's Hayden. It has gone through to take the top 10 position away from Stapleford. Luckily, he was able to keep it going and not drop too many positions. But that's probably not what he had in mind when he came across. Maybe a lapse of concentration there, Steve, as they came across the line.
Yeah, he'll be absolutely gutted with that. I mean, as Rich just literally drove around the outside of him, he had to lift off big time as he went onto the grass just to keep it all together. And yeah, like you say, lack of concentration, maybe just as he came around that final corner, as we're watching Sutton now come round to take the checkered flag in 12th place.
Yeah, 12th place goes Sutton. Cook is in 13th at the moment. We're just waiting for him. Here is Butler as he sort of goes round. He still has the fastest lap of the race. Actually, it's an absolute flying lap as well, to be fair, Steve. It's 1:31.1, which is actually quicker than we saw it not only in qualifying, but in race 1 as well. So Butler absolutely flying this race. It's just a shame he wasn't able to show it off on the lead lap.
Yeah, the beauty of reverse grids, unfortunately, that's it's what happens. You can get caught up in a bit of a tangle, and it's a game changer when it comes to race day.
It is indeed, as I think we've got all the drivers across the line now, and we'll be able to get you a few interviews. So, right at the start, it was a bit interesting, shall we say, with a few drivers obviously making contacts and going straight on at places like Hawthorne. But overall, it was a pretty measured race, wasn't it, after all that, when things settled down, and Richards really did just drive away with it. It was brilliant driving from him.
Yeah, I think what we saw in both races today was the front pole sitter, well, the guy that got into the lead just literally got his head down and went away with it, and kept the nose clean while the rest of the guys battled, and that was the way of both races.
It was indeed, and we'll hopefully be able to get a quick interview with perhaps our race winner of Richards in just a few minutes as well, and maybe one other with the likes of potentially Marshall, who was obviously involved in a big way in that battle throughout the entire evening. But yeah, we'll be able to bring you that interview sooner rather than later. In fact, here is Matt Richards in the comms box, so I'll just bring him in. Matt Richards, congratulations on race number 2 victory. You must be very pleased with that.
Yeah, pretty happy. Considering the lack of experience in the car, it was pretty good fun.
Well, you say lack of experience. Do talk us through that a little bit, because obviously those people at home want to know a bit more about the drivers and who's involved, what they get up to, and stuff like that. So, how much sort of practice have you had in the car this week? Have you been preparing for Brands Hatch GP at all?
I have been slightly busy, so I only installed the car this afternoon when I got home from work. So yeah, a little bit of practice before the race, about 3/4 of an hour, I think, just to get dialed in and figure out a few things that the car does, and yeah, just went from there.
Well, it was a good second race, obviously very good in the end. You had loads of push to passes left as well. Really, it was just all about trying to gauge that gap, wasn't it? But it did help that a few of the drivers behind you were sort of battling tooth and nail throughout it. Race 1, though, is what I want to ask you a little bit more about, because that seemed to be you showed your pace in race 1, but maybe the racecraft or experience in the car maybe just let you down a little bit, I think.
I think so, yeah. I think I just got caught out a little bit coming up to Sheen. I'd had that little scrap with Alex, and I was pretty happy with the move, and I think the car just went a little bit further left under braking than I wanted it to. The wheel dipped the grass, and that was it. So yeah, I had real good fun coming back through and battling with some of the guys, and yeah.
We're just having a watch on the stream as well of you going around the outside of Edmonton through Druids. A little bit of contact, wasn't he? He sort of touched your back end round, but actually he ended up coming off worse than you. What was your sort of opinion on that, or whether or not you actually even remember it?
I do remember it, yeah. I think it was just an optimistic dive. Sometimes people try it when the lead position is kind of in front of them. I saw it come in, tried to put the car in the best place I could, and just hang on to it, really.
Well, it certainly helped you, because it gave you a pretty big gap to a whole host of drivers behind who ended up fighting their way, obviously, amongst each other. So, yeah, what are your ambitions then in terms of the championship then? Obviously, there's only 3 rounds left now. Are you going to try and just take race by race, or have you got ambitions to maybe try and get towards the top 5 of the championship and stake your claim?
Top 5 would be nice. Now that I've got the groove of the car and I can put a bit more time in, maybe we can bump that experience up a little bit and make the results a little bit more consistent.
Brilliant. Well, we're going to Catalonia next week. Any experience of there at all, or is it going to have to be one of those things where you sort of jump on 45 minutes before and have to learn the car and the track yet again?
Got a fair bit of experience around Catalonia, so that should be a nice one to dip into. It's a track where I usually run well at, so we'll see what happens.
Good stuff. And just before we say goodnight, is there anybody you'd like to give a quick shout out to or thanks to?
Thanks to Silverstone Composites, Simpy Race, and BQR as well. A couple of sponsors that have helped me get to the position that I am today.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Matt. Well done on race 2 victory. I'm sure we'll be chatting to you probably next week as well at Catalonia. And yeah, good luck for the rest of the championship.
Thanks.
So that was Matt Richards, race 2 victor, Steve. And just before we wrap up, any final closing thoughts from yourself going into Catalonia next week?
No, I think we'll just see much of the same. Some really close racing as we had tonight. Some great battles and some very measured drives from the two guys that won the races tonight. So great to see. Great little championship, and looking forward to next week.
Brilliant. Well, from all of us here at Simply Racing, the VRRC, we'd like to give a big thank you to everybody who's watched and commented. We'll be back next week. I might not be, but Simply Race will be, with Steve and potentially another commentator for Catalonia. Next week, Thursday, 8 o'clock start, as per usual, on all the usual streaming services. So, yeah, make sure you give it a follow or subscribe, and tune in next week for more of the TT Cup action. I've been Jack Oliphant with Steve Proudley. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Between the two of them,
The inside of coats,
Parker gets too heavily involved.
and that's Whitehead and Coates.